The first Pluto conjunction this month, because we have 3. The first is with Venus. This is happening at 3 degrees of Aquarius, as are all 3 of them. And you might be wondering, why are all 3 there? And it's because Pluto is slow. So we've talked about this previously, that there are degree points and there are minutes. So I didn't write this down in here in my notes today, but they're all likely happening at different minutes. So not the exact, but the exact degree, probably slightly different minutes because it's over the course of a few weeks. So this Venus-Pluto conjunction is occurring on January 19th at 11:04 p.m. Eastern Time. Check your time zone. It may be happening on the 20th. Again, the energy is also radiating. It's not like, oh, it just happens for 2 minutes. So this will hover for a little bit, not days and days, but it's just the peak is happening at this moment. And then it will start to dissipate as Venus leaves that 3 degree point and gets farther and farther away through the sign of Aquarius. So, what does Pluto represent in astrology? Well, Pluto is power and transformation. Venus, in contrast, as a personal planet, is about peace, love, money, assets. The last time that we had a Venus-Pluto conjunction was actually not that long ago, and that is because Venus moves around the zodiac relatively quickly. So you would look back at December 7th, 2024. So that is our reference point for the last Venus-Pluto conjunction, and it was in the same sign. Because I mentioned earlier, Pluto officially locked into Aquarius in November 2024. So that would mean that that last conjunction was happening either at 0 or 1 degree, probably 0. So this is now a few degree points over, but in the same sign and over a year later. In general, Venus-Pluto conjunctions are known for eliciting some obsessive tendency. So again, think about it like Venus is love and relationships. So it's like you're thinking about people, but then Pluto is power. So there's like this intensity to it. So it could be in dominating or, again, like obsession tendency. Also, there just being some sort of heightened intensity in your relationship. So whatever area of life this is, the relationships that are there may just feel really intense and kind of like, woo, okay, something's going on here. Something's getting stirred up today from the depths, because that is Pluto. It's like the underbelly. And then it could also trigger some insecurities. So again, it could be something bubbling to the surface because Pluto is the subconscious. So it's making the subconscious conscious. And when we're talking about Venus, normally, because you might hear this and go, oh my gosh, I thought Venus is like so nice and bubbly and happy. Well, we're talking about Pluto, and Pluto is a very, very dominant archetype. And so when you're mixing it, when you're throwing it in a blender with Venus, it doesn't feel necessarily as pleasant because it is so strong and such a force. So you are taking the subject matters, the areas in some ways of what Venus's normal domain is, and you are completely uprooting it. You're saying, what is way underneath that? Or what is the darker side of that? So in general, for this specific conjunction, because it is in Aquarius, we can expect to more critically assess our relationships for improvement. So again, Aquarius is like, let's make a change, let's make things better. It is very strategic and thoughtful. And Venus, relationship side, Pluto rebirth side. So again, it's like we're renewing. We're trying to, again, all three of those coming together. We're trying to make it better. And it's very serious and intense what we're thinking about and how we're approaching it. We also could be seeking intellectual balance. So what is the power dynamic? We're trying to Venus create balance in that Pluto power dynamic. Aquarius to make it more equal, egalitarianism. And Aquarius is also very, very intellectual. And then finally, we also could see seeking stability in our community. So again, balance, focus on people and relationships, focus on larger groups of people. And this is where, again, Pluto throws things. Pluto isn't necessarily about stability, but it's about having something better that is reborn on the other side. So Pluto in general is a much longer term movement and energy. It's much slower. Whereas Venus, we know, moves fast. Aquarius is like, let's do this. Let's try that thing. So you have a little bit of competition and tension around the pacing. Now, I'm going to just jump right into the Mercury-Pluto one because it's only happening a few days later, and then we'll do chart examples just 2 for 1 with these two because they're very close and they're more similar than the Mars one later. Mercury-Pluto conjunction at 3 degrees of Aquarius on January 22nd at 12:14 p.m. The last time we had a Mercury-Pluto conjunction was January 29th of 2025. So again, not that long ago, almost exactly a year. Mercury represents the mind, communication, thought patterns, writing, speech, travel. So we have that now being mixed with the Pluto energy, power, transformation. By this point, Venus, it's going to be pretty close by. It's not going to be sitting in the same exact spot. It's going to be a little bit farther out, but this is also why we want to consider in some ways both of them together because they're happening in very, very short time and they're definitely going to be in the orb. So there's going to be a little kickback of we're already processing and working through and having some of that Venus conjunction moving away as the Mercury one is happening. So they're very, very back to back. In general, Pluto and Mercury conjunctions are known for very deep thinking, potentially feeling highly suspicious of others and their motivations. Again, that's what your mind is doing. And thinking about the power dynamics, thinking about what's going on with other people. And it's in a very intense way, hence the feelings of suspicion or paranoia, maybe. And also, these types of conjunctions can be very provocative in that how you are communicating could be that way, be very provocative, or be manipulative in some way. Because again, we have power dynamics going on. We have getting at the underbelly. So maybe you're saying that thing that is normally not said, the thing that is normally more taboo, or that is really just bringing a very serious truth to the surface. And you could be doing that in just a hyper blunt, over it type way, or out of spite or some sort of intentional like manipulation. So again, just as we talked about for the Venus one, when we rattle all this stuff up, it doesn't sound particularly fun and exciting. This is why it's important to know when these types of transits are coming, because we can also know that this is collective energy. So we could be on the receiving end of this. It doesn't mean that we're necessarily the one that is trying to manipulate. There could be people that are trying to manipulate us, as an example. And if we know that is the energy of the day and this time and what's happening, then we can do our best to pause, to not be overly suspicious in a paranoid way, to not fall down a rabbit hole of thought, and try to have that wash over us as much as possible, and know that when these planets separate, that we'll have a little bit more clarity and objective thinking, because we'll just have our regular Mercury in Aquarius situation. Again, we can expect to experience more curiosity about being really introspective, strong mental acuity. So there's a sharpness, there is a depth, there is a, again, awareness of not even just what we're normally aware of, but we have all of that Pluto energy helping us to see, really process, think, and understand more. And we also may find ourselves identifying like security or insecurity, trying to create some building blocks within our discourse. So what is our communication like? How are our communities working or not working? What needs to be kind of tipped over? How can this be renewed or changed? So you can think about it in some ways as like there's some very intense like brainstorming going on, not even just about you, but helping how the collective is set up, how we're talking about things, and how our society is functioning and what is true. 10th house as an example, then we're thinking about literally and processing the power dynamics in work or reputation. So I mentioned earlier, if you're someone who is not actively working, then that could be the authority figures, that could be mentors, that could be people that have been with you for the long term in your career, and that could be people that have helped to shape or have spoken up about or against something as relates to your reputation or what you are known for. And being in some ways at odds with that, some ways potentially suspicious about it, some ways maybe overthinking or going down a rabbit hole, or feeling again like you can't trust the people that are talking to you about some of these discussions or what their perspective is, or feeling especially obsessive or repulsed by in some way certain figures or people that are already within, or you feel or concerned that are like infiltrating this area of life. I'll give an example for me. Mine is in the 8th house. So that is looking at mental health, like this is where it's just like whenever I see anything 8th house, I get a little nervous because I'm just like, I don't even understand what this is going to look like. This already sounds dark. And then now I'm talking about 8th house, which is mental health, death, rebirth, transformation, money in the sense of shared resources, debt, taxes, etc. And I go, ooh, I don't know about this one for me. So I will be curious to see how this plays out in the couple weeks when this is transpiring. But the obsession, the intense focus, the reflections or rumination or suspicion or concerns of manipulation, etc., introspection, all that stuff could be around finances, very simply. Could be kind of getting in my own head about things or questioning certain relationships I have, or like who could be trusted or who is there to support me, or who is helping me to grow or not. Maybe they're blocking me from growing. Again, we don't know the exact perspective that we're going to be on that day. If we're on the more constructive end because it's Aquarius, or if we're on the more mopey end because it's Pluto in the 8th house of like, I don't trust any of this, or I'm, mad or frustrated about this, or they're out to get me or something. If you're feeling some type of way, it's very easy to slip into that mindset. So yeah, again, we could almost like mark on our calendar like the 19th through the 22nd. And if you want to be generous, add a buffer of at least a day on either side. So that's the better part of a week. So that basically week in January, just putting a little bracket around that in your calendar and thinking, all right, this is a warning zone. There might be stuff that comes up during this time that doesn't make me feel so great or makes me question things in a way that might be counterproductive or not helpful, or that I could be on the receiving end of things that are not super supportive or feel negative or feel like they are detracting in some way, or that it's very blunt and revealing things. And in a lot of ways, that's helpful. It might not feel great in the moment, but you're like, well, I'm glad that I knew that. I'm glad that I understand that now. Glad that I see that now. So, third house, even further on that line, we're talking about communication. So, what's being discussed in relationships? What are you talking about in life with siblings, with neighbors? Through technology, with technology, what are you writing about? Maybe your subject matter. I know Z, you were mentioning that you're writing a lot more. Maybe your subject matter during this week when you block this off on your calendar, maybe your subject matter shifts. And then maybe you fall out of that after, but you might just have a period of what you're writing about cover more of these very intense relationship topics, thinking or writing more about those insecurities or community and trying to find stability and maybe feeling some type of way about that. So it could, if you're focusing on writing, then that could be a way that this presents. It might be what you're thinking about, what you're feeling compelled to write about. Knowing that we're processing this, you don't necessarily need to put that out into the world because things are being kicked up, but it could be really helpful as an exercise to get some of that out. And frankly, for anybody, regardless of which life area, like, do we necessarily need to have that explosive or blaming conversation? Not necessarily. But we could write it out in an angry letter or free write, journaling, whatever it is, just to get it out. And then we'll look back at it once we get to the other side and go, whoa, okay, I actually dropped some truth bombs in there. Maybe I can have that conversation with the clear mind and outside of this orb. So I would definitely consider that if you're finding that some of these heavier topics, thoughts, reflections, ruminations are coming up, maybe just write some of it down. Get it out of your system by doing that and tucking it away. And then once we clear this energy, you can come back and revisit. But of course, we must keep in mind that I am advising maybe don't act on it. But on January 27th, we have the Mars-Pluto conjunction, which wants us to act. So again, I don't know what's going to come up for everybody, but it might be you're saving it to just act on that Mars-Pluto conjunction, or you're trying to act in the gap in between when you're of clearer mind. And we'll see. It's all going to depend on what it actually came up for you. But